Would you say that McCaffrey is the best non-quarterback offensive player in the NFL?
I mean, I think he's right if you're talking about fantasy. So, yeah, he's the best player to draft for fantasy, but he's not the first player I would draft if I was trying to build an NFL champion team or a top-ranked offense. And maybe it's the defensive back in me showing what scares me and what I believe scares defenses and what compromises defense more than anything is a big play threat. So deep ball receivers are the ones who would terrify me. And Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, those are the guys who do that, who break defenses that require multiple defensive backs to look over there and the attention of multiple defensive backs over on that side of the ball that frees up the running game, and they still make big plays. I remember in the Super Bowl that the Falcons lost to the Patriots, who they doubled Julio all game, and he was still catching the ball. And as good as Christian McCaffrey is, I don't think there's that one. Oh, they had a safety behind him right there. I remember that play. And as good as Christian McCaffrey is, I don't think he has the same impact of a type of receiver like Tyreek Hill or Julio Jones, and that they just break the defense. They'll give you 50, 60-yard touchdowns, and when they're not doing that, they're gobbling up 3 and 4 defenders because that's how many you need to stop them. And I think that opens up the offense for so many other players, more so than I think a running back. As dynamic as Christian McCaffrey is as a receiver and a running back in modern football, I think that the big play receiver, in my mind, is a little scarier and more valuable.
Yeah, see, this is where we disagree at, because I think, to me, receivers are a little bit more dependent than the other positions. And
Right.
two, I think defensive coordinators can find a way to take away a number one receiver. Although you did show, some Julio Jones highlights that definitely would contradict that. But for me, I got to go with the running back. I mean, you're talking about a guy in Christian McCaffrey who's Marshall Faulk-like. We just haven't seen a guy like this in the league where he's turning up both on the ground and catching over 100 balls in the passing game. And what makes it hard is not only can you run the ball, but you can split him out and find the right matchups. And Domonique knows this as well as anyone.
Right.
The game of football is about matchups. And when you talk about whether you're playing zone, whether you're playing man, Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield is just another receiver. So, how are you going to match up with him? Are you going to stay in a certain defense and have an extra linebacker on the field? Okay, great. I'll go ahead and put split Christian McCaffrey out there and let him go to work on the linebacker. Oh, you want to substitute a linebacker and put a safety? That's great too, because guess what I can do? Now I can run the football with Christian McCaffrey. So a guy like Christian McCaffrey can go out here and dictate to the defense what type of personnel they need to be in. And that's why, for me, I'd rather have the running back, the dual threat running back that can do it both running and catching out of the backfield.
Yeah, but I think you're right about Christian McCaffrey being dynamic and being an exceptional player and a great player to build around. But when it comes down to it, I think that what happens with a player like that, and he's capable of making big plays, but if you don't bend your defense to stop him, he's going to get 7 or 8 yards, maybe 10 or 12 yards, and maybe every now and then he's going to make a big play. If you don't bend your defense to stop these receivers, it's 70-yard touchdowns off the top. And when you're down or you're behind, you're trying to come back, there are ways that you can that there is no way that you don't still need those big play receivers. I think a guy like Christian McCaffrey, as good as he is, and you can line him up in a slot as a receiver, you can line him up as a receiver, you can run him out of the backfield. Like, all those things are true of Christian McCaffrey. But the truth of the matter is, when you're down, you need a fourth quarter comeback, or you're trying to close out halftime to get down the field, a guy like Christian McCaffrey is less a part of an offense as these big threat receivers. And no matter what phase you are in the game, if you are running the ball on the first play of the game at 1st and 10, you have to have a safety over top of Julio Jones, or else you are risking giving up a touchdown. So that's, to me, why it matters. And they're both quite dependent. I can't understand a world where you think running backs aren't also dependent as you as an offensive lineman. Like, come on. Running backs are just as dependent as receivers are.
Well, the distinction is, running backs are dependent on the offensive line. But a wide receiver, depending on the offensive line, the quarterback got to be halfway decent in order for them to get the production. So that's why I say, when I look at Christian McCaffrey, he can dictate personnel on defense. He can dictate matchups. And I think the one issue in Carolina with Christian McCaffrey is, who are the other weapons that's going to scare you? I mean, you got DJ Moore, you got Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel. I mean, those guys are fast, but they're not scaring anyone as far as, like, just from a name perspective. Christian McCaffrey is a guy that he's going to be the first guy off the bus and the first guy that defensive coordinator is going to circle like, we need to stop this guy.
Right, and I think that he had a good season despite not having great quarterback play last year and not having a bunch of necessarily great weapons around him. But DJ Moore is a player. But I think that their numbers should go up. If Christian McCaffrey is that good, he is that impactful, then those guys should be in man coverage. Those guys should be isolated. Those guys should have big, big games. And I know that happens with Julio. Like, offenses that Julio's on are good offenses because Julio's on them and nobody else. I think Matt Ryan's a good quarterback also, but because of Julio, everything else is built on the fact that you're trying to stop Julio. Christian McCaffrey has been on some bad teams, and it's not all his fault, and some mediocre at best offenses, and of course it's not all his fault, but it feels to me like in the modern NFL it's much easier to build around the threat of a big play receiver than it is to build around a running back, even though Christian McCaffrey is not some sort of old school ground and pound 3 yards in a cloud of dust running back. I know how special he is as a player, but I'm just saying, if I'm sitting in a defensive meeting room and I'm worried about who I have to stop more, I'm more concerned about stopping a big play receiver than I am a running back.
Well, the last thing I'll say is this: a lot of times you can tell who teams value more by what they pay them. You know, so wide receivers get paid more than running backs. So
Yeah.
you know, from that, you know, I would definitely say you're right. But just me
Christian
personally,
got paid though.
he did get paid.
But the
So
man
that
got
just shows you,
paid.
like, what the Carolina
$64 million.
And listen, when he got paid, did anybody bat an eye? No, nobody batted an eye about it either. Oh,
I didn't bat an eye. No. I didn't bat an eye. I'm fine with they paid him.
Okay.
But I think the entire analytics community was like, that's a bad move. Like, there was lots of eyes batting on the internet.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.